foot, 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 foot. In the hall. You. Okay, tell me some of the words you've got. Birthday. Happy birthday. Other words that you've got. Tell me some of the other words you've got. Person. We've got person. Some of the other words you've got.
Other end.
Other end. Some of the other words you've got.
Front.
Person. Person. Some of the other words you've got. Other words. You've got other words.
Towel.
Towel. Good. You've got towel. Wrapped loosely in a towel. Some of the other words you've got.
Singing.
Singing. Some of the other words you've got. Quickly. Here's the poem. Here's the poem, and at the end, tell me how many of the 40 blanks you got. Be honest. Here we go. One day as you step out of the bath, the telephone rings. Wrapped loosely in a towel, you answer it. As you pick up the receiver, the front doorbell rings. You ask the caller to hang on. Going quickly into the hall, you open the door the merest fraction. On the doorstep is a pleasing stranger. Would you mind waiting? You explain. I'm on the telephone. Closing the door to, you hurry back to take the call. The person on the other end is, oh, I made a mistake. The person at the other end is singing, happy birthday to you, happy birthday. You hear the front door click shut. Footsteps in the hall. You turn. It's a poem called Happy Birthday by the British poet Roger McGough, and I love it. Do you think, what kind of a poem is it? Is it a happy poem or a scary poem? What kind of a poem is it?
Scary.
The beautiful thing about it is it can be either a pleasing stranger. What is a very interesting choice of words, a pleasing stranger. He doesn't say a beautiful girl or a handsome man. He says a pleasing stranger, which is kind of a bit creepy, isn't it? To me. Anyway, the point is yet again, what I'm trying to demonstrate, and I've got one more way of doing this, what I'm trying to demonstrate is the teacher can be at the front in control, but it doesn't mean the students have to be all passive and hopeless. Because that went on for rather a long time. But it actually works as an activity, because looking at your faces, I could almost see your brains working. Seriously, it's quite... You could see people going through things in their mind, thinking it could be that, it could be that. Then you get the first letter, oh, like that. And then you get two letters, and people... What you've got is students sitting there, you're all sitting there, and I'm doing all the work, except I'm not doing all the work at all. You were doing all the work, actually. And in a big class, that kind of activity is really effective. It has many benefits. One of them is that the students, what are you doing? You're thinking about English vocabulary. You're running all the English vocabulary you know through your head, trying to go through the little vocabulary box on your brain computer, trying to find the word and go through it in the alphabetical and all that kind of thing, and everything else like that. But it also has the virtue, of course, that for most of that time, I was pretty much in control, and I didn't have any management problems with you at all, because you were focused on the task. You weren't throwing paper aeroplanes or spitballs. It was quite good. Now then, one more activity like that. I want you to look at this list of words. And you must choose one of those words. Choose a word for you. Choose a word. Now, the next thing is, just check with the person standing next to you, because you must not have the same word as anybody around you. So check with the person next to you and the person behind you. You must make sure that you don't have the same word as everyone else. Quick, quick, quick. Just check. The meaning of what? The meaning of what? Grubby sort of means sort of filthy, dirty, a bit messy.
And husk.
Husk. A husk is like the dried shell of a. You can sort of about the husk of a peanut or a pistachio nut. The husk is what's left after you've ate the nut. That kind of thing. All right. Have you chosen a word? Would you please all stand up? Stand up, please. Everyone stand up. Now then, this is the deal. This is Team A. This is Barcelona over here. And this, oh no, I'm going to cry. Oh, sorry, this is Team A. This is Team A, and this is Team B. I'm going to read you a passage from a novel called Mr. Pip. And the novel is an incredible novel about kids in the middle of a war zone in Polynesian islands. And they end up being taught by a man who has no teaching experience at all. But the only thing he knows about is Great Expectations, the novel by Charles Dickens. And so he does all his teaching through the story of Great Expectations, and that's why the novel is called Mr. Pip. And it's an incredible book about, I think it's by an Australian author, and it's a very clever novel. It was published 3 years ago about education, but it's also about races and racial prejudice, because the teacher is the only white person on the island. Everyone else is black. It's about lots of things. Anyway, the point of this is I'm going to read you a passage from this book. And in this passage, the teacher doesn't know what to do. He doesn't have any idea how to teach. So he decides that what he will do is invite some of the mothers into the class to teach the kids and tell them things. And of course, every time that a mother comes into the class, the kid whose mother it is in a state of high nerves in case they're going to be really embarrassed. Oh no, what's mum going to say this time to my class? Oh my God, it's going to be awful. And in this particular case, Mabel's mother, Mrs. Kabui, comes to the class. And the teacher has no idea what she's going to teach, what she's going to say, but it's his best guess about how to keep the students engaged. Remember your word? Yes. When you hear your word, sit down. But you may not sit down if you do not hear your word. Which team will be left standing? Here we go. Mabel's mum was the first to come and speak to us. Mrs. Kabui arrived at the open door in a blaze of late afternoon light. Mr. Watts, sorry, that's the teacher. Mr. Watts held out a welcoming hand, and Mrs. Kabui walked quickly towards it. She spoke in a whisper to Mr. Watts. I saw Mabel shift to the edge of her chair. Mr. Watts gave a nod, and Mrs. Kabui looked relieved. Class, we're very lucky today, began Mr. Watts. Mrs. Kabui has agreed to share with us the remarkable life and times of the heart seed. Mabel's mum gave a shy smile. She stood bare feet. No, she didn't. She stood barefoot in a white blouse and a red skirt. As soon as she smiled, you forgot the tear in the shoulder of her blouse and the pouring marks left by grubby fingers of a child. She spoke softly and chose her words with great care. Thank you, Mr. Watts. Thank you very much. I am here today hoping to surprise you kids. She looked around to see if we were ready. We were. What if I was to tell you that some gardens begin their lives in oceans? Again, she looked around the class, her gaze slipping over the desk where her daughter sat. Her smile was for us all. I am here today to talk about the heart seed. She told us that one day a heart seed floats on the water. The next day it is washed up on the beach. The next week the sea breeze and sun have dried it to something light as a husk.